Hello, everyone. I see 3 people already online, so let's give it 2 more minutes before we get actually started. I'm having trouble refreshing the materials into the slides. Um, ah, Wrong button probably. And here we go. Okay, Karsten, if you're back from getting coffee, please say something because you will be up pretty soon.
Something?
Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome everyone. This is the last ITF interim meeting of the CBOR working group before we meet in Brisbane or remote Brisbane. There is just one topic on the agenda for today. That is what we will be talking about for during the meeting. There is a sketch already in the notes based on what we discussed last week. But Karsten has been so kind as to file a few slides, so I suppose you would like to say a few more things to that. Before we get started with that, does anyone want to add something to the agenda for today, so that we make sure that we don't run out of time without considering that? Hearing nobody, Karsten, floor is yours, and let me see whether I'll manage to pass control of the slides to you. And I think
Okay, got it. Okay, so I didn't really have time to prepare a lot for this, but I thought it might be useful to simply have a couple of slides with essentially a landscape overview, because there are like 15 or 16, 17 drafts out there right now, and it could become a little bit difficult to understand what these drafts are, but in reality, it's all very structured. So first of all, we have the set of documents that are in some form of formal state at the moment, and the time take document is still in the RFC editor queue. I don't know what's going on there, but slowly other drafts for me have been emerging. So I think there is some progress, but they are a little bit overloaded at the moment. The more interesting thing is that we have 3 documents in working group last call state right now, and 2 of them are about CDDL and 1 about EDN. So we have CBOR, the data interchange format, and we have EDN as a language for describing instances, and CDDL is a language for describing, I shouldn't say classes, models that describe sets of instances, something people call a schema language or something. The EDN document has been stable for a while. I think we last submitted that at the start of February. Yeah, February 1st. So that should be pretty stable now. There have been a few last-minute changes, unfortunately in 2 increments on the grammar document. I got some feedback from people trying to use CDDL that essentially pointed out things that could be fixed very easily in that current draft. And there is also a draft that uses the extension point control operators that puts in things like base 64 and printf, which was an interesting thing I wouldn't have thought of. Okay, so I think here we don't really need to discuss things, except if people have questions about the grammar 04 thing with a syntax with simple values between 32 and 255. That was simply an omission. And that's not a very well-used part of CBOR, so that's why nobody found out that that was missing. So in CDDL, we have one project that is nearing completion, the modules project. And we have a new draft that is 2 days old, and not much changed. Not much has changed there. There's one reason why we cannot really ship that yet. The module structure doesn't currently take care of sockets and similar constructs where we add incrementally to a choice that of course can interact between modules, and that interaction is not described in the document yet. So my personal objective is to have this ready for the hackathon, so we can actually see whether we can successfully process modularized CDDL models that actually make use of sockets. So sockets are kind of another specialized thing that not everybody is using, but those who are using it as an extension point. We just put them into SDF, for instance. Corim, I think, uses them, and EAT uses them, and so on. So it's important to get that part right. So with that, there are some 4 drafts that do various things with CDDL. None of these are on the table right now. There is a FISA document that just contains ideas. There is a CDDL2 draft, which essentially provides a little roadmap for what else needs to be done in the CDDL2 direction. There is a draft that gives CDDL for data models that we find in RFCs that may not be described in CDDL at this point in time, or that actually that might be using CDDL already but can benefit from additional CDDL. So that is certainly going to grow in parallel with completing modules, but it's not something we have to work on at this point in time. And finally, there is this interesting little idea of using CDDL for CSV documents. So I'm just waiting. Maybe somebody else has that same problem I certainly have, so that turned out to be useful. But it's not yet complete, I would say. So again, 4 documents, nothing really needed to do right now. So the main remaining work is on the modules draft. Then on EDN, EDN has an extension point, and there is now a draft that shows how to use the extension point to do in EDN what modules allows us to do in CDDL. So these are about external references and external references to CDDL and external references to other EDN EDM specified data items. So it's interesting that the EDN extension point actually covers both of these, at least in some rudimentary but useful way. And with the reference to CDL also comes draft numbers that some of us are already using. In particular, people outside the CBOR working group are using this to get their various numbers in order. And I just moved one other document, I forgot which one, to this numbers procedure that allows us to work on drafts while IANA code points haven't been assigned yet. So we reduce the number of ways we can mess this up by having a well-defined procedure to do this. Okay, so this was about languages, the languages that are in the CBOR working group, EDN and CDDL. Of course, we also have work on the core of CBOR, and that, of course, all comes in the form of using extension points. So PACT uses tags and CBOR simple values, and notable tags is all about tags. So this is obviously, we had time tags as another example, but that's already done. And the PACT cluster is of interest. The number is not right. It should be PACT 12. I'm sorry. And there is a new draft from Christian about putting references into the table setup. So I'm sure we want to talk about that in this book. And yeah, notable tags is just a big attractor for descriptions of tags. So we have a little bit more coherent information about tags than the registry gives us. The registry is great for pointing to the specifications, but it's not great for finding your way through the number of specifications that are out there. And finally, we have a set of CBOR applications. So Martin has the DNS CBOR draft. Maria and I have the CBOR Yang stand-in draft, which is very rough at the moment. Maybe we can get an additional one for the IETF that is a little bit more polished. But I think the basic idea is already pretty sound. We can use tag definitions that we have that use binary representations in place of what are text representations in Yang, even in Yang CBOR, which otherwise is a binary format. So that's essentially a missing link. And outside the CBOR working group, we have the equivalent. We have an RFC, I forget which one this was, 9277, I think, that describes how to put IP addresses into a CBOR data item, and you have the same thing for MAC addresses, and we have the work on CRIs, on structured representation of URIs, and that's something that we observe, or in the case of 70 42, that's essentially done. So we just pay attention and make sure there are no accidents in the final completion of that. So I think that's where we are. Again, this looks like a lot of drafts, but I also think this is the right way of doing things, having small documents that do one thing well and not trying to mush everything into large documents. So I think we are on the right track, but of course it requires some attention to not dropping the ball on these documents. So that's essentially my input to the agenda discussion.
Thank you. I've already Marco has made good notes of this, and I've in the meantime worked a bit of that into the draft agenda. I have two questions on, so based on that are to me not yet clear when applying this to the agenda. One is on the topic of CDDL modules. What's the goal? What will be the goal of presenting that at the IETF 119? Will that is there a particular kind of input that you're looking for, or is that mainly making sure that the working group has a status from which it can proceed working group last calling that, or where do you want to what do you want where do you want to go there?
Yes, and I think at the IETF we might be able to pull in other people. So we actually should be having a mini tutorial about the modules, so people know how they can use this with examples that actually are based on documents that other people are working on, like current.
Okay. And I had something. Yeah. Um, we didn't have in the agenda as we discussed it last time EREF in the planning. Would you like to talk about that? I think we still have time left.
Yeah, I explained the E application extension in the December interim, I think. So not much has changed there. Basically, the idea is if you write a model that needs lots of little constants, and those constants are still fluctuating, and you don't really want your document to become contaminated with them. In particular, if the constants are actually defined in a different draft. And we are seeing that in various core documents where we are referencing other core documents that register, that have some registries that also define numbers that will be used in the CBOR. And specifically, we looked at the GM admin document as
Yeah.
a potential guinea pig for getting these things right. So that's the E part. And then there is the ref part, which essentially came as an observation from again, I forget who said it. Sorry, I have to look this up. Somebody who was trying to write examples, and we already have things like elision and so on that helps us writing complicated examples. But in some cases, you actually want to make the example complete, so you can run something like CI, a test script on your draft to make sure the example actually works. And in that case, elision doesn't help you. And ref essentially just points to another piece of EDN, which might be identified by a file name or might be identified by a URI. So these are the referenceable identifiers with all the discussion that comes with the referenceable identifiers. And you can, for instance, include a certificate that is defined somewhere, which is a couple hundred bytes or so, in your example for some protocol data unit that is used in credentials exchange or something, without having to paste in that certificate. So that's the idea of ref, and E and ref are surprisingly similar, but in the end also different, because E essentially comes with a separate CDDL model that actually defines those constants, while ref essentially points to EDN, and EDN doesn't have, it's not a language where you essentially assign rules to names or something like that. EDN is just one tree. So it's about identifying trees and not identifying named constants within a CDDL file. So that's really the main difference between the two.
So what I take from that good summary is that you don't plan to reiterate on that during the ITF meeting, because that was my to me that was the pressing question for today. Is that something that makes sense to talk about in Brisbane? And I understand that answer to be no.
Well, it's really something we do for other people who are trying to use CBOR. So I could imagine that, again, this is a place where we want to do a mini tutorial and show examples like from GM-admin. So the people who use CBOR in their standardization work, or CDL in their standardization work, or actually in this case EDN as examples in their standardization work, know how to use this functionality.
Okay. Let me check with the agenda, because we now have two blocks of things that are more directed towards like teaching people that there are cool new tools around, or starting to be around. And I look, um, we don't have too much overlap with the Yang style groups, and yeah, and we have a 1.5 hour slot. So what I'm wondering, and you with more experience, all of you with more experience here, might be having good answers here. Might it make sense to split the meeting up a bit into a block that is dedicated as a tutorial block, or is that is like explicitly addressing people from outside the usual CBOR crowd? For example, by placing that at the end when other working groups that don't use up the 1.5 hours might have completed already. Would that work?
Well, we now are on a Friday, so my hope of pulling in people from those other groups is a little bit dashed. But yeah, I think that Australia is far enough away that most people actually will stay until Friday evening. So it might still work. Um, I never know when I'm trying to invite people to come to a meeting. I actually try to put their stuff at the start, because then they know when they have to be there. When I say it's in the second half, but we don't quite know how the time will go, then it's a
Yeah,
bit for them to.
that would need to be like clocked precisely, yes.
Yeah.
But I so yeah, let's. I'll briefly talk with the agenda also about the agenda also with Barry. But I think that this could work to have them. Yeah, at the start works just as fine for me. Having at the start a block where it's about these are things that are now possible within the ecosystem. So if you just drop by, as some call them, a tourist, like, hey, things are around. And then I think one of those two more tutorial style, I don't remember precisely what the other was, modules, is what could take more discussion later on. So then we'll go into the part that is more discussion heavy.
Right.
Yeah, let's give that a try for structure, which also removes another question on structure that I had prepared, because that I think that makes sense. Let's try that.
I'm just
Seeing in the
seeing
chat.
that I
Yeah.
lost the deterministic cluster. So there are 3 more drafts out there that apparently I inadvertently deleted.
But that would also be in that second half of. No, it's really a third half. Because the
Yeah,
first being about languages, the second being about extension points, and that now is about serialization.
yeah,
And it's not planned to be on the agenda for Brisbane either, unless something in that direction comes to us from dispatch.
yeah. So I didn't even think that we would be discussing something like the envelope document. I think we really need to have an interim for that. So I didn't think that we will do a lot about that, in particular because those documents seem to be pretty stable at this point in time. So there are 3 documents out there. There is the CDE document, which defines the common deterministic encoding profile. There is one application profile, which is draft McNally D-CBOR. And then there is an informational document that is a backgrounder about deterministic serialization. And we still have to decide whether that's something that this working group actually wants to look at, or whether I can always put this through the independent submissions editor if the working group doesn't have energy for that. But I think it's useful to have this backgrounder so we can keep the actual CDE spec very, very short. So it's like 8 pages at the moment, and I wouldn't want to go much beyond that because it's really mostly restating things that are in other documents anyway.
Yeah, that aligns with not having that in the meeting. Yeah. To be honest, I haven't read the backgrounder thoroughly yet, but I do support documents that are short, so that's probably a soft plus for having it separate. Okay, so my takeaway from this as a whole is that I'll reshape the sequence of the Brisbane agenda. Is there anyone else who thinks who has a Is there are there any other documents that we should consider for the agenda? Because think I think it would be helpful to close the list at some point.
So I was lazy and just used the documents page of data tracker to make this list. I still don't know why I lost the CDE and DCBOR in the process.
Yeah, might also be documents that you mentioned that will not really make it to Brisbane. But
Yeah.
not hearing any. I think the only one taking homework here now is me, and by extension Barry later. I'll make a draft agenda out of that. Upload that. Let the group know. And I think with that we're going to the AOP section. Ira?
Yeah, I was just going to remind you that Barry put tentative dates for interim calls between 119 and 120 in the agenda, and we should work on those maybe.
Thanks a lot. Yep.
He also has a typo in his mail note. In one place, he says 16, but he meant 20. Obvious. In June.
Yeah, that would be 19. No, 19.
That would be 26th rather than 16.
Yeah, because then
Anyway.
it's plus 14.
Right.
So the plan continues to be that core interim meetings are on odd weeks and CBOR interim meetings are on even weeks.
I
It's
think
the
that
content.
has
It is.
been the case.
Yeah, I think so. So it is. The idea is to continue as we always have.
Right.
I don't think that having a meeting on April 3rd already makes too much sense because it is pretty short after that, after the IETF already, and last times we skipped a few interims because things were not ready yet. So I would go with the 17th, and I don't think that anyone has ever complained about keeping the cadence. So if anyone does, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll just do that.
Just note that May 1st is holiday, so you may just want to remove it from the start.
May 1st.
Yeah, it's a major holiday in North America and many other.
Most of Europe, yes.
Well, May 1st wasn't one of the dates, so that doesn't matter.
Wasn't.
It's May, oh, yes, it is. I take it back. Yeah, May 1st. Or
Yeah, that we'll
29th is also the US highway holiday month. No, it's not. May 27th. Never mind. It's fine. May 29th, okay.
Okay, so that would make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 interim meetings if we started April 17th. I think that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, let's go with this.
Thank you.
Thank you, and hope to see you all on the video feed coming here from Brisbane. Yep, thanks for being here.
Yeah, maybe just one reminder at the end. We have 3 working group last calls out there.
Right.
So
Thank you.
please do send your comments, and if it's just that you have read the draft and are happy with it, we certainly need some feedback.
So especially they all have too long didn't read lines at the start.
Yeah.
And there is one in particular that I do hope to get into from reviews on, that is CDDL more control.
Yeah, so we all should extract those printf examples and send them to the list so people know why printf is a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to read the reviews on that document. Good. Checking again that the notes where I did write to say that are really exhausted, and now they are. Okay, have a nice morning or evening, depending on where you are. And see you next time at IETF 119. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Marco, for taking notes.
Sure.